Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs, and welcome to episode 6 of our Andor Aftershow. And I have to say, this is a very exciting moment for me because I have Jonathan Voico here.
This is not a glitch. I am here in the flesh. What am I doing here? I don't know.
Who's running the show now?
Well, Jonathan, I mean, all the way back, I started at Collider in 2015.
Yeah, I remember your first day walking with Schnepp.
Yeah, I came in with Schnepp, and I was on the AMC Heroes, and you were there.
Yep.
So we go back 7 years.
Quite a bit, yeah.
But we've never streamed together.
That's kind of weird to think about.
It is kind of weird, but you streamed at Collider.
I did. I used to be on the Game of Thrones Aftershow, and I did some mailbag stuff for them. So, yeah, I've been out here.
You have been out here. This is a historic time for us. It's very good to be working with you here on camera. Normally you're behind, making everything happen.
Where Taylor is, right?
Taylor is behind there producing the show. So we didn't.
Storm.
We got a Jonathan.
We got a Jonathan. Like Taylor said, we said John was going to be on the show. We didn't say which one.
Now, let me ask you this. Yeah. We're 6 episodes into Andor. This is the conclusion of the second of 4 3-episode blocks, as Tony Gilroy called them. What do you feel about the show so far? How do you feel about Andor?
I'm loving it. Absolutely loving it. We had a conversation a few episodes back. We were talking about Tony Gilroy. I said, oh, you know what? In my mind, it was Dan Gilroy. It's Tony. And then you informed me, yeah, well, they're brothers. I'm like, well, that makes sense. And the writing, I know he doesn't write everything. He's written, I think, 3 episodes he's credited.
Dan Gilroy wrote these 3.
Okay. And I can feel it. I mean, the dialogue is top notch. I know what people are saying. Oh, but finally there's some action. But this show is such a grind. It's so slow moving. Every piece of dialogue, even down to the editing choices.
And their brother John. So you've got Tony Gilroy's the showrunner. Yeah. Dan Gilroy wrote these episodes, and their brother John edits.
Okay, and you can feel that, like that. I don't know if you want to call it syncopation, but just like that link, right? It's all there. All the cuts are what you need to see. There's no fat. Although some people would say there's fat in this series. I don't. Every conversation leads us somewhere, informs us about a character, informs us about how they're feeling about something, or there's foreshadowing. I mean, we have had so much tension building to this point. It just crescendoed to today.
I have to say that I thought this episode of this show was a masterstroke in all levels. First of all, the tension from the get-go. The mission has begun, and every single thing, even when they were marching in formation, if one step was off, I kept waiting for somebody to notice.
So I watched Andor because they were so busy working on their marching that when he walked by and he was marching, I'm like, oh God, is he gonna march right?
Here's the thing. What's so interesting to me is, like, Tony Gilroy is an Academy Award winning screenwriter. He directed Michael Clayton, which is a movie I love, but a lot of people have the same complaints about Michael Clayton as they do about this show. Oh, it's too slow. Nothing's happening. But here's the thing. There is so much happening on this show, but it's not external.
Right.
It's internal with all of these characters. And then everything, all the pieces were set in place, and you've got the Pilgrims are marching. The Empire is preparing. Mon Mothma's going to address the Senate. Yeah. Luthen is waiting to hear what happened. But And you just know, like, everybody's getting in place. You've got the 2 ladies are making their assault via the water. You've got our guys who have to hopefully not give up the fact that they're not really part of an Imperial garrison. I thought this was masterful filmmaking on every level. And man, people talk about, well, just like the 3rd episode with that shootout in the streets and that factory, this buildup, the first half of this 48-minute, or with credits, it's still like 40-minute episode. But I was like tense the whole time.
So I woke up this morning before I came into work, and that's when I watched it. And I remember thinking, I had coffee next to me, and I'm like, do I need this coffee? I'm literally jittery right now.
Yeah.
I'm so nervous about watching. And the whole time I'm thinking, oh no, the tribesmen, they're gonna start rebelling or doing something that throws off this scheme. Something's gonna go wrong.
Right.
Well, I felt like that in House of the Dragon. That's why I like that show. There's so much tension. Everything is leading to something. So then you're left with this baggage, right, of conversations. That's like, they mentioned this. They mention that. They mention this. So you feel like you're on the mission. You're watching everything. You're hyper vigilant.
I mean, I totally agree with you. One of the things too, the fact that they introduce an Imperial higher up and his family, his wife, his son, and the son's like, I don't feel good. I don't want to go to this thing. And, I mean, here's the thing that I understand that there's a lot of fans, and I get a lot of pushback on my own social media accounts, like, Rob, this show, it's so boring, and this. And I'm like, we're seeing Star Wars, I think, the way George Lucas thought about it, because look, the Ewoks were a reference to Vietnam. How were the Vietnamese able to thwart a much more technologically advanced
and wealthier
war machine, and the fact that families, we've seen Mon Mothma's family, we've seen Cyril's mom, we now saw an Imperial officer, because they just they've never dealt with this in Star Wars. But all these people, I mean, when the family's taken hostage, you're actually like, God, are they going to kill this kid? Andor's like, we've already seen him shoot somebody in the face in the first episode. I mean, he will rock and roll. And in Rogue One, I just found that this piece, this 30 minutes or 40 minutes of television was an incredibly tense, beautifully made, and very, very satisfying episode of not just television and Star Wars, but of filmmaking in general. And they've really dealt with the fact that in the first block of Andor episodes, we saw Andor's backstory,
right?
Living on this planet that had been oppressed by the Empire, and what the Empire does to indigenous populations. We actually see an indigenous population making a pilgrimage there, and what the Empire is doing to planets. Like that, there's only 60 of them left to see the eye, and we're gonna take over. And what's gonna happen when we?
Yeah, and they don't just do it with guns. They said they put up, like, basically they set up bars along the way. So they're just distracting the people with bread and circuses sometimes too. Anything they can do to start to subjugate, to get anger, to just be like, the Empire is not so bad. You become complacent, and then they just steamroll in.
They steamroll in. And I think that the fact that this show, we've gotten a lot of Star, but now we're getting the wars of it all. And this show is delving into, it's incredibly relevant to our world today. I mean, science fiction has always been great allegory. We're seeing it right here. And look, if people were worried, the action sequence, the heist, like you said, I love the fact that the heist went off without a hitch. Like, their planning worked. I mean, it wasn't easy.
Yeah. And there was some snafu at the end, but I mean, it still was like clockwork up until.
Yeah. And I kept waiting, like, who's going to, that's what you're waiting for it to go bad.
Yeah.
And then when they finally, I mean, the tension was so heightened, like when she was running back after putting the disruptor for the communications. I mean, even when she was booking back on top of that dam, I'm like,
you could see her through the doorway. You're like, oh my God, he just has to look. And she's like right there.
And he's like on the phone talking. I'm just like, the whole time I'm cringing.
Right.
But that's great filmmaking.
Even the moment when the chieftain, he takes the goat hide and he talks to his people and he just throws the goat hide in the fire. I'm like, oh no, they're pissed off. Like, I didn't know what that meant, because that's not my people. It's not my culture. I don't know what's happening, And
I love the fact that this planet Aldani is a new Star Wars planet. It's a place, the fact that they have these pilgrims and that there's this celestial event, the Eye.
Which is amazing.
It was amazing. But I loved how it started. With the streaking meteor across the sky. This was where it led up to. Like, I was wondering as well, what's going to happen? Yeah. What is this? And I had no idea that it was going to be this impressive.
And there was always a reminder that, I don't know if you have the picture, Taylor, but even when they're in that submersive, like that little submarine is pulling them, you see one of the meteorites going over them. So it's always a reminder, this is happening. This is what's going on. They're under the crunch of time.
No, and I think that what's so interesting to me about this show is I'm always talking about authorship.
Right.
This show is exactly what its creators meant for it to be. Like, people are talking about, like, if you don't like this show, it's not because the people that are making it are delivering something that isn't good. I think that it's people's expectations. You need to meet the show on its terms. You can't expect, that's the thing, people are expecting Star Wars to be, I want it to be like the Star Wars I want it to be like.
Right.
And I'm thinking, you know what I was thinking after this episode was over? I was thinking, in 10 years or 20 years, when some kid discovers Star Wars for the first time, when he's like 8 years old, or she's like 8 years old, or they're like 8 years old, whoever discovers it at 8, if Andor is their first experience with Star Wars, and I hope from now on it is, if that's their first experience with Star Wars, they're going to watch this show, even at 8, because if they've never seen it before, they become engrossed by it. You get 24 episodes of this show. Then you get Rogue One, which is going to lead you to A New Hope. And then you get Empire, and then you get Jedi. That slow burn and then into Rogue One, it is going to be so much more satisfying to watch Star Wars as a whole if you come to it through Andor now. And I was like, man, I wish that could happen to me. I mean, I got Star Wars when it was new, but this show is just, and I know, I get it. A lot of people, I'm tired of, I watched a guy eat cereal. Could have been any meal. He's having a meal with his mother. And what you're watching is you're watching the forging of somebody who's going to be a big problem later, because he's going to be an evil Imperial officer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in like something like everyone wants to rave about Game of Thrones. Well, we saw, why can't I think of her name? Stark, the daughter.
Arya Stark.
Arya, she was selling, clams and oysters. I mean, for like 2 or 3 episodes, and it still had a payoff.
Yeah.
So,
and these 3, I love these 3 episode arcs. It's perfect 3-act structure in a movie. And this 3rd act, I mean, my God, when they got into that base, the tension was just ratcheted up, and let's even talk about the end. I have to say, Luthen, when he hears that they pulled it off, when he has to, excuse me, let me go check in the back. When he hears, do you know anything? Do you have anything from Aldani?
You see that relief, just.
And he just, there's that long pause, and he turns and he's just smiling. Yeah. I was like, yes, it was. And then you have Mon Mothma.
Oh yeah.
Here, Mon Mothma is trying to go before the Senate and make her case, and it's just looking at people that are completely just disinterested.
It was a shock to the Senate. I mean, like, so that wasn't just something that the Empire can be like, oh, it was a misunderstanding, it was a miscalculation, it's nothing. This literally has gone to the Imperial Senate, which now Palpatine knows about it too. Right. Not that we have to involve Palpatine with this, but the point is that this had huge ramifications. This was big. This wasn't just like a little, well, they got away with something.
Yeah.
It's like 80 million credits or something. Yeah, 80 million credits.
Yeah, it was a huge...
And that was half of it. I was hoping they could get all of it.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a huge thing. And what's interesting is we're watching the rebellion being born.
Right.
And I just feel that if you take this show, I used to go to, when I was growing up in high school, I went to the Seattle International Film Festival. And I saw a lot of foreign films, and there were films that I thought were slow moving. But I realized I was going to see 5 movies in a day. I just had to get my headspace to understand what it is that I'm watching. And if a movie was slow moving, I'd think to myself, okay, it's only a certain 2 hours long or whatever. I can train myself to go with it, and maybe I'll find it rewarding. This is a show that I think fandom needs to rise up to its level and give it a chance for what it is. Because if you realize that you're getting Academy Award-winning screenwriters, and Dan Gilroy, who wrote this, he wrote and directed Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal. Incredible movie. Tony Gilroy, his brother. I mean, we have an embarrassment of creative talent on this show, which is giving us something very unique, certainly different, maybe not as action-packed, but my God, is this rewarding television, I think.
I do not disagree. And now where we pick up next with Andor, now there's going to be a time jump of some sort. So we're going to start. So now where does Andor go next? We had to say goodbye to these characters, some still living by the end, but I don't know if he's going to run into them again or not. Even the way it ended was so like, he can't prove that he didn't just murder that guy outside. So there's still a tension there.
Well, absolutely. And you think this is not, the Empire is going to be mad, after all this, and that our
embarrassed. Their ego is the point.
Totally bruised. And then I've worked for you for 7 years, and
I love that line. I deserve to be killed after what I had to do for you. Yeah.
And he was so good.
Yeah.
And I, when our philosopher, I mean, when that accident happens and he gets crushed between all the credits,
pancakes.
Oh God! And then they go to the doctor, and you think he's going to live.
And you then hope, yeah. So when they came in, the first time they came in, I thought, okay, they finished the procedure. He's going to sleep, and he's like, "I'm sorry," and he pats him like, "What?" And then just cover him like,
just
whoa.
Cover the and then she's like, Andor's like, I have to go take this. It's his manifesto.
And I think that bought him some credit in a way. It's like, I'm only taking the 200,000 you guys promised me.
Right.
This is going back to him to prove I didn't murder this guy in cold blood, or else I could just leave you guys here and take off with 80 million credits and have my own, island-sized planet somewhere.
Right. No, dude, it was so good. I mean, I loved it so much. Well, we want to know what you guys think, which we're going to get to that right now. But first, we're going to hear from the sponsors of this show, the great people at Raycon.
Hey guys, we want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, Raycon. Now, you guys know I've been using Raycon as a part of my morning routine for a long time now. I love getting up, getting on my treadmill, pulling out my iPad and watching my favorite tech YouTubers like Linus Tech Tips, another good Canadian kid, by the way. And my Raycon wireless earbuds come through for me every time. Raycon's everyday earbuds look, feel, and sound better than ever. With optimized gel tips with the perfect in-ear fit, these earbuds are so comfortable and they will not budge. Trust me. My Raycons give me 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life. And one of the best things about Raycons is that they are priced just right. You get quality audio at half the price of other premium audio brands. It's no wonder Raycon's everyday earbuds have over 50,000 five-star reviews. And when I'm on my treadmill, the earbud tap functions help me stay hands-free, and the noise isolation is fantastic. So guys, go to buyraycon.com today and use the promo code Campea15 to get 15% off your Raycon order. That's code Campea15 at buyraycon.com to score 15% off. Buyraycon.com, code Campea15.
And thanks to our friends at Raycon for making a great product. I actually have a pair of those earbuds.
Nice.
They're very good. So let's find out what you guys think. We can wax rhapsodic all we want, but really we want to know what you have to say. And Aiden Foley sends in a super chat and says, we were just talking about, you'll be hanged for this, for serving you for 7 years. I deserve much worse. Can this show get any cooler? Lieutenant Gorn might be my favorite now. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Lieutenant Gorn is named after a Star Trek character. Just saying. Lieutenant Gorn. No,
I love that line. It shows this that this series has a conscience. The characters have conscience. Everything weighed on them. It's not just like, a mustache twirling villain and a hero. Everyone has a past. I love it.
I do too. It's so good. Jamie Sundays says, I'll say it. I don't care anymore. I've seen enough. This is the best Star Wars content since Return of the Jedi. I would dare say it's the best Star Wars content since Empire Strikes Back. But I think you're correct, Jamie. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, just because of its adult nature, I feel that Star Wars, in my mind, I've always said there's two great Star Wars movies. There's Star Wars and Empire, and then there's probably Jedi and Rogue One. And the rest has always been sort of disappointing until this show hasn't missed a step for me.
Even from even stepping away from writing, even from a visual perspective, the cinematography, the color, the mapping that they use, the shot where they're flying through the eye at the end, and you're getting some of the like lens flares that we grown accustomed to, but there's a graininess to it. I don't know if you noticed it. It felt like film, like actual film. There was a graininess to it, and just their choices, like the way they're telling a story visually, is I've never seen in Star Wars before. Because even like the prequels were kind of like a highfalutin kind of feeling to it. Like we're Star Wars. Look how great we are. It's just like everything's on blue screen. And this was just, I've never seen anything like this for Star Wars.
And even that, the Star Wars, the visual effects palette of Star Wars has always been unique to Star Wars. Nothing else ever looks like that. Even the stars, the starfield backgrounds in Star Wars, no other space show has those kinds of starfield backgrounds. And seeing those TIE fighters travel, going after them, and the whole celestial, the eye, and using the Polaroid cameras, their navigational
device. I know, every time I see that.
I love that. I mean, pull up,
right.
Dive. Even that was tense, and it was just beautifully realized. And even when something would hit the windshield, it was clinking. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And it was very satisfying watching TIE fighters get destroyed that way.
And it still holds true to Star Wars, like you said. I mean, even when the TIE fighters are getting dropped from the station, you hear those klaxon.
Yeah.
Like, you still have those things that are reminiscent. You know this is Star Wars.
You do, and what's so great is we've been seeing the sound. It's like Huey helicopters in Vietnam movies.
Sure,
TIE fighters to me are the most ubiquitous and the most. They scream Star Wars more than anything else because of that sound.
I don't think this is Star Wars, but every time I hear a Huey sound, all I can think of is Fortunate Son. Literally, it's almost made to that rhythm.
Because they always play that song in Vietnam movies, you know, it's that. But and again, the whole ending scene. Even when it was blasting through the tunnel, whatever I don't know what the name of that ship is.
Right. It's just like a freighter.
Are the doors going to be shut? You know,
I was afraid because, though, I said this a couple episodes ago when Andor's like, do we even know if it's mounted on the rail? I'm like, oh, God, it's not going to be mounted on the rail.
All of that was so great. So great. All right, what's next, Taylor? Sean Stewart says, such another great episode and work done by the actress playing Vel, especially the scene where she was stalling or collecting her nerves. Hated her character in Game of Thrones. Oh, she was on with Arya Stark.
Oh, yeah. But, speaking of, that's exactly the city she was in, too.
Right. It's yes. And you know what? At the beginning, when she was scared. I mean, how many shows or how many Star Wars things would do that?
She's the leader. She was like giving everyone encouragement, saying, you better show up. And the moment it was her time to show up, she was almost like, is it a go? Is it a go? She's like,
it was so, and they're waiting. I mean, they're all waiting on her. She's late. Man, it was, and then even that, the Imperial officer taking a leak. Was that the first time someone took a leak in Star Wars?
While they're under the rock formation there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was, God. Oh, man.
Yeah, everyone's human. Well, even if they're not an alien, everyone is a being of importance. You know what I mean?
Like, and I'll tell you something. People have brought that up to me. There are no aliens in this show.
So far, we haven't seen.
I mean, we saw a few in the Senate.
Yeah.
In the distance. But I think that's been. I bet you
only one droid too.
Right. Only one droid. I think as we move forward, we're going to get more of that Star Wars flavor. But I think they wanted to do it this way to put you in the mindset of what the story they wanted to tell. They wanted to equate it. They wanted to address things, everything from colonizing and planets and partisans and war. They wanted to make sure that you realize this is a human story. And I think too much Star Wars-ness would have obscured that fact.
Sure.
And I think that's another reason why it doesn't feel like Star Wars.
Honestly, that's one of my issues with just one of them. I mean, I did enjoy, in theory, Kenobi. But one of my issues was like everyone has their own little pet droid and we all have to fall in love with the next. And it's just like, oh, so you can sell it at Disneyland. Like, I know that sounds really terrible, but it's just like, why do we have to have like a BB-8 every single time?
Now, I know. And you know what? If there's one thing that this show makes me sad for is I wish Kenobi was like this show. It would have been faster and more Jedi action and all that, but in terms of the writing, the elevated writing,
I think that's what we all thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is a show I thought Kenobi.
It wasn't. I think it was an experiment. I think there are places for volume stages when done right, like that whole scene in the House of the Dragon on the bridge.
Incredible. Best
so when you use it,
stage I've ever
when
seen.
you use it constantly, it's like, how do I believe there's a whole garrison of troops standing right here and no one can shoot each other? We're in the same room. It was an experiment on how to do it. I wish they didn't do it with someone as top tier as Kenobi.
Right. I totally agree with you. I mean, the locations they're finding, it's a dam, but we'll put a big turbo laser there. And
I'm loving the locations on this more than on Lord of the Rings of Power.
Oh, way better. Oh, incredible. What's next? Aiden Foley says, for those who think Andor is a hero, go ask Skeen. Yeah.
No, he's not a hero.
Him.
Yeah, he's not a hero.
I don't think he's a hero at all.
It wasn't even until Rogue One. It's like, God, I'm still doing this. I hope it pays off. And does he survive? No. He gets blown up.
And when you first meet him, he flat out murders a dude.
Yeah.
Just like
because he wouldn't shut up. He's like, I'm not gonna fight.
Yeah. I mean, it's he's an anti-hero. But the thing is, we're so used to getting Star Wars is so used to painting with a broad brush. Here are the heroes. Here are the villains. Even in the first trailer for Star Wars, they say that.
What did we think? Like in World War II, the French resistance. Do you think they were just like wearing a cape?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they had to make sacrifices that they don't want to talk about.
Right, and that's what this show does, and I think it's great for that. Jamie Sundays goes on to say, I love the original trilogy cinematography. I actually think it's quite underrated, but the visuals in this succeeds, if not on the same level. Well, I mean, obviously they had more money, but like, okay, here's a perfect shot. Look at this this is beautiful cinematography that you can only get on location.
Right.
You can't recreate this. And I mean, I guess you could with visual effects, but you can tell that's real. That's a real landscape. And it gives a feel to Star Wars that, look, the original, look at this. What a location.
You can feel
augmented with visual effects, but still.
You can feel the temperature. You can feel the moisture in the air.
Yes. Yes, you can.
It's not just like on a soundstage with good lighting and a backdrop. Obviously, that stuff's not there. That stuff there, is added. They probably shot in front of a real dam.
Yeah.
And then all of this
Then they
is like whatever.
it. Yeah,
but
they augmented
you can feel the night chill in the air.
I mean, they do things like this, like our Imperial officer, he can't put his belt won't clasp.
Right.
He's gotten, his wife's like, maybe because you've gotten too big. I mean, they didn't have to do that, but they just, no, we've never seen that before in Star Wars.
Well, even her quip about like him saying like, we have to be on our best behavior or something. She's like, well, I can't remember if she said, well, that'll be a first, or that'll be interesting to see or whatever. I mean, you see that animosity that it's not really a loving family. He doesn't care about his sickly son. And the thing about the Empire, and we've seen it in the novels and everything else, they always want to impress. They're always sycophants.
Right.
They're always just trying to impress to the next ladder, and then they step on the people below them that they got beyond, and then they want to impress the next person, and they step on those people, and it's all they do.
It's great.
It's literally what Andor said. They're fat, and they don't pay attention to anything.
Right. And look, if you don't get all that, it's all right there. It's all in the visuals. It's all in the writing. It's so
And
good.
yet you're going to say this show is boring. It's not doing anything. It literally just informed our whole conversation just now.
Absolutely. 100%. Daniel Vakura says, I agree with the idea that Andor is Star Wars for grown-ups. It's the closest feeling I've had to reading the Star Wars Legacy comics set 135 years after the films. And that series is like the Game of Thrones version of Star Wars. It's epic. It's funny because I feel that way too. And I think anybody who's a fan of a franchise, it doesn't matter whether it's Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, take your pick, whatever your franchise is, people that are really into these things are really into them. Mm-hmm. They take them seriously. And that's why the expanded universe, people read those books, because the people that take it seriously. And a lot of the novelists and a lot of the extended, like the Dark Horse comics, they take that stuff seriously too. And that's the universe that we want.
Yeah.
I mean, like Mandalorian has both. It's got that pulp sort of flat swashbuckling sci-fi. It's also got the Western vibe.
Oh, you feel like that's Clint Eastwood.
Absolutely. But you still get the Bill Barr, like that Imperial episode where he talks about what they did.
One of the best episodes in the series.
One of the best episodes in the series, because it was serious. It had an Andor-esque vibe to it. And I think that's what people want from this. Mm-hmm. That's why it's so funny to me when people are like, this show is so slow. I think it's interesting how there's this bifurcation in the fans that are watching it. Some people love it, and other people are like, it's boring. Why are we watching people eating cereal? I'm like,
well, that's what's happening on screen, but are you listening to what they're saying?
Right, exactly.
Are you looking at the regret in his eyes of his, like, how he blew it and he wanted to climb a ladder, and now he's going to get revenge on this bastard Andor somehow.
Yeah, and now he's got to rely on his mother to get him a job, to talk to his uncle, whoever his uncle might be.
And she's, in some ways, physically she's so feeble, so he's probably thinking, and yet I have to, like, be, I'm beholden to her.
Right,
because she has connections and everything.
Exactly. And that, again, that's in the show too. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of pathos you want from great characterization. And she's a great character as well.
I love her character.
She's great.
Yeah.
All right, what's next? Matt Cassidy says, Luthen at the end shows the most character and plot depth to Star Wars since episode 6 with just one line and a laugh.
That laugh, I was like, ooh, this kind of feels like the Joker, where he starts going like this, and I was waiting for him to start swaying like a little like Joker thing, He didn't do that, but it just had that moment.
I mean, look at the joy on his face. Yeah. I mean, because he pulled it off. They planned this, and he knew that this was probably a suicide mission.
Yeah,
he knew that the chances of success were slim, but it's not only that it worked; it's that he was able to do things like get Andor and to put this together, and he couldn't have been there, and he was probably like in the previous episode, his assistant or whoever she is says, well, in 24 hours tomorrow you're going to know if it worked or not, so why worry about it now, and that was such a great release Because you don't know what he's going to do. You think, oh, I'm going to go look for, is this guy going to figure out he knows something about Aldani because it's now on the news everywhere? And when he goes back and you just realize he needed a moment to be like, yes.
Right.
It was great. That was a human moment. That would have been the first thing, like if you got script notes back, hey, you don't need this moment in his. Why are we going back to
We didn't even
Luthor?
see him until the end, but then you're like, oh, good. We're starting to see that it's hitting back at in the Capitol's planet.
And everybody knew. I mean, Mon Mothma, word spread like wildfire because we're seeing this hadn't happened before.
Well, and then we see inside that Epcot Center dome thing. It looks like the Epcot Center dome, but the inside of it, what are they? They're what's their department? I forget.
I don't know the name of it. The Grand Maester's department.
Basically the fact finders, though, right? And it's just like
no one's going home.
Everyone's on this mission.
Yeah. No one's going home. Call your families. You're not going home for the holidays.
Before it was just some ruffians we had to quell here and there, but this is obviously organized.
Yep,
there. They were inside there. Yeah. Exactly.
What's next, Taylor? Jamie Sunday's one of two. I know the team was going to bite it eventually, but I figured toward the end, maybe, but nope. Gilroy wrote a perfect death for this terrorist group. Their deaths were violent, unexpected, a little pathetic, realistic, no hero-like savior, just like real war, just a masterclass of writing. 100%, Jamie. And I hope that people... I think the people that are reluctant to embrace this, they initially wanted something different out of this. They thought they were going to get something with more of a pulp sci-fi sensibility, more action-packed than they're getting. I'm hoping that the people that are not down with it go back and revisit it and give it a chance. Now that they know what they're getting,
it leads, right?
Yes, and they can marinate in it and take it for what it is as opposed to what they didn't get. So, because it's so rewarding. The show is so rewarding.
Yeah. He made a... Can you bring that question up again real quick?
Yeah.
I think it was the second part.
Yeah. He ended by saying, that's what
I was going to say. So, the commander, who is the turncoat, right? Exactly. That's just it. When he gets shot, it's like that. He's just down.
Right.
There's no like, oh my God, he's down. Let's like talk to him. He's got dying words. He literally is one of the first dead. And it's just like, ugh. And it's like a sack of potatoes. He's down and you're like scrambling. Who's going to live? So yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's real war, man.
Yeah.
One person, one moment you're there, one moment the next.
And you got to hide. You got to get cover. It's like, ugh.
So good.
I'm looking up a sack of potatoes, but I'm not fast enough.
Can't find a sack of potatoes. Moving along. Attack of the Mushi says, how are we only halfway through this season? Superb. I mean, somebody said to me, was this the mid-season finale? I'm like, nope, there's 6 more episodes.
And it's 6 episodes were conditioned. And here we are. This would have been a perfect story arc. And I was like, now we got to wait another year. I mean, we're not even halfway through.
No, this is the halfway. And I'm like, thank God. Because I'm sure it's only going to get more focused. I mean, I would expect the next, because John Campea hasn't seen anything beyond this.
Okay.
So I'm curious about what's next.
Right.
Because I would imagine now the Empire is in damage control mode. Like we have to tighten our grip. Princess Leia. The more you tighten your grip talking, the most star systems will. Well, now the Empire is going to start to tighten that grip for the first time.
There's going to be some more boring conversations with the Imperial commanders trying to figure everything out. We're going to have to pick up with Luthen and Mon Mothma and see what. I mean, what are they doing with that money? It's got to be the nest egg, right? Of starting to buy not capital ships,
buy some P-65 or whatever X-wings.
Whatever, yeah. I mean, I don't even think they had X-wings yet, right? But I mean, either way, they're buying support. They're buying spies. They're buying information.
There's this old place on the 4th moon of Yavin. We'll just get somebody to rent it for us, and we can. No one will be there.
Yeah.
I mean, Brandon Nesmudeen says, I really like Mandalorian, Obi-Wan, Rogue One, and Revenge of the Sith, but I can't deny it. This is the best Star Wars content since the original trilogy. Just incredible. Well, Brandon, I think you park your shuttlecraft in the same shuttle bay that I do, because I feel the same way. Don't you?
I do. And I'm not. There are elements, like I said, of even Obi-Wan that were just incredible. When he finally faces Vader, for real, not when he just gets some fire between them and he runs away.
Right.
But when they had that final battle, that was incredible.
It was incredible,
and emotionally, it was engaging too.
Yeah.
I just and I do think that this is just like on another level.
Well, the thing about this is it's consistent throughout. It has a consistent tone and a feel on every level, whereas Obi-Wan Kenobi was wildly inconsistent. It was all over the place. 1 minute you're watching little 9-year-old Leia run through the woods and outrun her captors.
Flee.
And then it's just all over the place. And from 1 minute to the next, you don't really, the tone is different. Kenobi doesn't seem like he knows.
I think there might have been too many hands on that.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's something where you see like these guys, the Gilroys, apparently have enough control on this.
Oh.
Whereas you're not like, you don't have the exec saying, we really need to sell more items, so get a cool droid here. And, we really want to reach out to kids. This is more Star Wars is kids, so put a little kid in this. And we need to do that. Make it a little goofier because this is like too scary. And it's like, oh, shut up.
Oh, I can't believe that Disney let him get away with this. But you know what?
I hope they let them get away with more Andor type content going forward.
I think they will. But again, the proof's in the pudding. It's how well does this do?
Right.
But I think this is going to be one of those shows that word of mouth is going to get people to consistently come back to it. Even the Star Wars fans that are naysayers now, they're gonna have to eventually capitulate and be like, okay, I'll sit down and try and watch it again.
Well, and I'll tell you, because most people that are like that, they'll say, well, the only good new movie that came out was Rogue One. I'm like, then dude,
Right.
come on. Go watch Andor. This is like tonally, and it's probably even better.
Yes. I think what I'm hoping, I mean, in a dream world, and I've got no knowledge to that. I would love, there's a lot of, they talked about how Rogue One was too dark. They had to go reshoot things, and Tony Gilroy was brought in it was Gareth Evans, I think, not Edwards. Gareth Edwards, Gareth Evans, The Raid. Gareth Edwards, who directed it, had to have Tony Gilroy come in and help out. I would love to see them, when Andor has made its 24-episode run, when it's finished, they give us a director's cut of Rogue One.
Or Rogue One,
where they add in a half an hour more, whatever was the darkness that was there. Call it a director's cut, call it the Andor cut, whatever you want to call it. I would love to see a different version of
Although
of
I wonder
One.
if some of that can't be shown, because I still have my suspicions that the people that Vader ends up knocking out, killing in that last hallway scene was the team. I think we see that team getting one by one killed by
That's
Vader.
interesting.
Because there were scenes in the, and I don't mean to like segue too much, but there were scenes that were cut from the movie that were in the trailer.
Yep.
Where it's like they're running on the beach, but they wouldn't be on the beach. She had like the recorder.
Right.
So that would imply that they got to the ship, and I think we see Vader killing them.
That could have been really interesting. I mean, yeah, definitely. But I would like to see. They're never going to do it.
I know.
But it'd be cool if they did. So
They had that scene.
yeah, yes, that scene. Brandon Nezamuddin says, adding on to my previous comment, I do wonder what the Nielsen ratings for the show will be, given how different it is from anything else Star Wars has given. I mean, that's a good question. They don't release, we'll never know what the streaming numbers are on the show, but I can only imagine that people, again, word of mouth, there might be people that haven't been watching the Star Wars shows that'll watch this. I mean, this truly is, like, even if you're not, if you've never seen Game of Thrones,
right,
you can watch House of the Dragon and love it. If you've never seen Star Wars and you have discerning tastes and you sit down to watch this show, I think people will get a lot out of it.
You know what's interesting about you saying that is earlier when we were just talking before we went into the super chats, this is a Star Wars show that doesn't already assume you know everything about Star Wars.
Right.
And you don't have to.
Right.
And the less you know
You're
about the
absolutely right
world,
about that.
it's actually better.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That's why I'm saying, like, if you're a kid, this is and people are like, oh, Rob, kids will be bored silly of this. I was never bored silly when I was a kid of anything science fiction, fantasy, and horror. It'd be interesting to watch.
Sure.
It's a world. I think that you're absolutely right, though. If you don't know anything about Star Wars, this is your show.
Yeah.
And you'll love Star Wars because of it.
Mm-hmm. Until it breaks your heart.
Until The Force Awakens. Sorry. I know people love that movie. I'm not one of them. Jamie Sundays says, credit to Susanna White, who directed these 3 episodes. Star Wars women directing roster is looking incredible. I can't wait to see more from White. In fact, I'll beg to see more. Jamie, I am right there with you. Miss White, Susanna White, if they don't give her a job directing the next Star Wars feature film, there's no justice in the world. As a matter of fact, Deborah Chow let me down with Kenobi. And I loved her work on Mandalorian, but I thought Kenobi, and I know she was probably forced to use. I mean, can you imagine if Kenobi was shot on actual locations in Europe and it wasn't just a story? I mean, it would have been so much better than what we're getting now.
Oh yeah,
it would have been such a much better show. And that's part of what I shouldn't rip on.
That's
Deborah
what I
Chow.
loved about Kenobi episode 1 is you really like got to sink your teeth in the dialogue and the whole vibe of what was going on.
Yep. And Kenobi episode 1 felt a lot more along these lines. Mm-hmm. And I wish it was more like that throughout the show. And again, I wish it didn't have young Leia. But that's just me.
Yeah, it really, after a while, you're like, my God, why is he still having to protect her? I thought they were going to like rescue her and then get her home, and then he was going to go on an actual mission.
Yeah,
like,
some kind of adventure.
But we needed her to climb into that vent. I'm like, this is Snowpiercer?
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't want to give you. I actually do. I do like things about it. I don't want to sound like I'm cynical.
No.
By the way,
that's her looking right at you, man.
Regardless of that, I loved her performance.
Oh yeah,
I freaking thought that was a young Carrie Fisher.
Yes, she was great. Really well cast. Just not for the show. Jay Master says the VFX in Andor are so freaking good, especially in this episode. The scene flying through the meteor shower was epic. I love this episode, but it was emotional and tense. Andor is way better than House of the Dragon. Jay, I would say this. I, like you, love this show. I thought the effects were impeccable. I think these are the best Star Wars effects of any of the TV shows by far.
That color palette, those kind of rust oranges and that blue and the... I could go on about color palettes, but I'm not gonna. But it was beautiful.
I wouldn't say this is better than House of the Dragon. I mean, you're probably more predisposed to being a Star Wars fan. I would say that both House of the Dragon and Andor are both spectacular examples of what science fiction, fantasy, and horror television can be.
Right.
Really good. And then, you get something like Mike Flanagan doing a Midnight Mass or something over on. There's just we are living in a golden age of genre material. That's why when you see substandard genre material, it stands out so much because there's so much good stuff.
Yeah, and like if we ever like we're down on something, it's not because we're of that mindset of like we want something to fail, we want to hate on it because of some political issue or whatever. It's not that. We're upset because we want it to be good.
That's exactly right. I mean,
and we're cheering for them.
It's funny to me, I've been a big proponent of Star Trek Picard season 3. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have been coming after me, like calling me a page shill or whatever because of the new trailer. People don't like the new trailer. Right. I'm like, that trailer is a 2.5-minute trailer for a 10-hour episodic series. A 2.5-minute trailer is usually for a 2-hour movie. Mm-hmm. And people are like, well, Rob, it doesn't look that good. And I'm like, it's it's 10 hours. There's main characters that aren't even in that trailer.
Sure.
And it's like, it's so frustrating. And look, I have not liked modern Star Trek. I loved Star Trek Picard season 3. Why? Because it is actually quite good.
Because you wanted it to succeed.
I want everything to succeed. Yeah. I don't go into anything wanting to hate it. And I want to love it so much that it's that much more disappointing. Like I've said before, I'm an easy lay. Take me, show. Make me do whatever. I'm your whatever you want me to do. And it's so disappointing because I am ready and willing to love you.
Yeah.
But then when something is bad, I'm like, oh, why can't this be good?
That's when a show becomes a grind.
It becomes a grind, man. Yeah. Anyway, Andy says this episode was visually the most beautiful episode I've seen in the past year. Also, you weren't kidding, John. This is Star Wars if done by HBO. Oh my God, totally.
Right.
I mean, the way everything ends, this is so... And when we say that, it's because HBO has such a high bar for quality. Whether it's The Wire, whether it's Sopranos, whether it's House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, whether it's The Deuce... Whether it's take your pick,
right?
I mean,
even the ending of this story arc is not something where it's like, oh, everything was wrapped up with a bow and everything's happy. It's like you're left with a little more like, a little more just I don't know, a little sadness. It's bittersweet. You're sad at how amazing it was. It made you feel, pulled on those heartstrings, and you're like you're ready to move forward, And
also it's nuanced because you have some of our main characters, maybe one of the most interesting characters gets killed, the man writing the manifesto, but at the same time, Luthen, who put him onto this mission in the first place, yes. So like life, this was all things to all people. Some people died. Other people see this as a great victory.
And speaking of the manifesto, she gave it to him.
Yeah, and she gave it to him. So. And that's... I'm willing to bet that manifesto is the basis of how the rebellion is actually started.
Could very well be.
You know, here's how we're going to define our freedom.
Right.
Which is, I can't
But
wait.
yeah, because they even had that conversation when the family was tied up. You're just going to kill us. Come on. He's like, no, that's what you would do.
Right. Yes.
We're different.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good. Jason A says, have you noticed the lack of aliens? It takes away from the Star Wars feel, but I think it adds to the grounded and gritty vibe, so I'm okay with it. Thoughts? Well, we talked about that earlier.
Right.
Jason, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, look, this is one of my problems with look, one of the things when I first saw Return of the Jedi, which, by the way, I know people are going to not like me for saying this, Return of the Jedi is the single most disappointing movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Because I loved Star Wars and Empire so much. I saw Empire 26 times in the theater. I expected Return of the Jedi to have the scope of Apocalypse Now or Gone with the Wind or Lawrence of Arabia, and it didn't. And part of the reason was the design work. I thought, whereas Andor and Star Wars and Empire were believable. They went and shot, when you see the Imperial Walkers come, they might not have been practical, but you're like, wow, this is really incredible. All the design work in Jedi, it looks like it was made for junior high school kids.
Well, even the shots are pretty static, and these are things I notice now. But
yes,
what I saw I was younger when I saw it. Actually, fun fact: Return of the Jedi was the first movie I ever saw in a movie theater.
Wow, but it probably blew you away then.
Yeah.
And
there was things about that, like Jabba's palace, that just creeped me out as a kid that have always stuck with me. So I understand that has an influence on my perspective, but I also can look at it and say, like, the dialogue wasn't as good. The shots are static compared to like the shots in Empire Strikes Back. Empire is still my favorite. So I get it.
Yeah,
but I can't betray my child. My inner child would be like, no, that movie
nor would
sucked,
I ask. Nor would I ask. I mean, for me, Star Wars literally changed my life. Yeah. It showed what people forget about Star Wars is there is pre-Star Wars and there's post-Star Wars. It changed the landscape of imaginative filmmaking so much it was off the charts because there was nothing remotely similar to Star Wars in May 25th, 77 when it came out. Nothing. Right. So to see it was such a game changer.
Even the actors were like, what actually are we doing?
Yeah.
Some space ape here, and I don't understand. They didn't imagine doing those scenes. You don't have the music, you don't have the sound effects, you don't have the coloring, the lighting.
The VFX.
I mean, you have the lighting on set, but whatever. The VFX, all the dialogue you hear is not. It's just you and me, like you and me speaking in a room. The dialogue, it's not like ADR or whatever. Imagine doing that, and you're not sure where this is going. You'd be like, I signed on for it. It's paying the bills. Until you went to the theater yourself. I wish I knew what the actors themselves felt when they finally saw. They probably saw it at the studio even before the premiere, maybe.
Right.
But what did they feel when they were like, "Oh my god"?
Yeah, I'm sure they were blown away.
Yeah.
I'm sure
we did this.
I mean, I was blown. I'd never seen it. It literally, it expanded my mind.
Right.
It was incredible, and this kind of gives me that kind of feeling in a way. This is where I thought I could grow up and be the star. Oh, here's where the Star Wars universe is. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I've been waiting the last 48 minutes to sneak Cy Snooty, right? Cy Snooty into
Cy Snoodles.
Snoodles. I thought it was Snooty.
Snoodles.
Oh, shit.
She can be snooty.
You're snooty.
But
Snooki.
she's Snoodles.
Snooki from Jersey Shore.
And the Rebo Band.
They look exactly the same.
Yeah.
But by the way, that's an animated version of Cy Snoodles.
Oh, I know. There weren't very many good, large files of her.
It's good, Cy Snoodles. Jedi rocks. But I think that we're going to see more now that they've set up they've made us believe in the Andor universe, the Andor Star Wars universe. I think we're going to see aliens and droids and more of that Star Wars stuff creep in because now they've already set the tone. So they've lulled us into
I do love, what was it? Was it episode 1 or was it episode 2 where where Andor is trying to get to one end of town and he gets stopped by someone he owes money to.
Right.
I love that one character. He's like, he told me to just stand here. How innocent he was and sweet, but he's massive.
Yeah, that was great.
So I totally accept that there's aliens.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. There was a lot of aliens in those first episodes.
Yeah.
So now
we'll get more.
Yeah.
This is just for this week. This is where they were. They were out in the wilderness in some hills.
Right. So, exactly. Exactly. That's, James Hoffman says the near empty Senate says so much, and we see the bureaucracy that runs the empire. The show gives us a behind the scenes look of how the empire works, which is what is so great about this.
They're not even there to vote anymore. They're like, whatever. We just have to collect our paycheck from the emperor. Maybe we'll show up if we want a special favor. Yeah.
And by the way, this is absolutely a commentary on our government.
Of course.
How many of our senators show up
Absentee
to every
votes and
Senate votes?
Yeah, and also, when in the original Star Wars, and they're saying, oh, the Emperor has what does he say?
Dissolved
the Senate.
yeah.
I'm like, in my mind, for all these years, I'm like, there must have been an uproar. How did he do that? There was no uproar. No one was there.
Right.
They showed up one day and they're like, well, will we still collect our paycheck? They're like, maybe. They're like, well, okay, but that's what I'm concerned about.
Right. I mean,
that's how much cynicism was in the galaxy.
Well, they make control without the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
The regional governors will have direct control.
Why are we paying these people off in the Senate when we have the regional governors?
Yeah,
you see this.
You see it. I mean, it's such a skewering of this is how democracy dies, and now we're seeing it. We're seeing apathy.
Yeah.
It's the Imperial Senate. We can't get anything done. Why show up? Why bother? Until
the Empire is actually making decisions, whatever.
Yeah.
Until you realize those decisions are enslaving whole populations and shutting down any kind of freedom of speech or anything.
And indigenous populations are just going to get run out of town.
Yeah.
They've been here for hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of years. We're going to get rid of them. We want to build our base bigger.
Right.
Yeah, it's great. Elvis Castillo says, I wonder how Andor will reunite again with Luthen after what happened in this episode. Right. What are your thoughts? Greetings from Costa Rica. I think that it's, like you said, there's going to be a time jump because we know that this first season spans 4 years and then season 2 is going to be a year leading up to Rogue One. So I would imagine it's probably a year later.
For everyone's misfortune, there's a fortune, right? So that it's Luthen's fortune. We have to see the Empire deal with their misfortune, and we have to see what Luthen does with this money and this fortune, and what's the next plan.
Yeah, and I think that we're gonna it'll jump ahead a year, probably, and or 2 years, and we're gonna see the results of where was this money spent. Where's the rebellion now? Do they have I'm sure a lot of people have joined their cause,
Sure.
But I can't. Oh man, I love this.
Well, and it'll still probably be cells, but I feel like even now, like these different cells, like there might only be a couple of them, and they don't even know about each other. But eventually, when you get to like rebels, the members of each cell don't necessarily know there's other cells, but the leaders of the resistance cells know of other cells, and then those cells start to unite, and then it becomes like this. Brigades become divisions, and divisions become armies, and whatever.
Yep, that's exactly what's going on. And we're going to see that, I think, in the next episode. I don't even know if there isn't, like, next week on Andor.
Right, yeah.
There aren't those. There's no...
I looked ahead. I'm like, oh, right, they don't do that.
Yeah, thank God they don't. I'm so happy they don't because you go in without any inkling of where they're going to go with this.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. How many times can I say that in one episode? I don't know. Sam Fisher says, poor Nemec. Oh, poor Nemec. I think we all knew he was going to die. I mean, I will say this. They were telegraphing his death.
Boy, a lot.
No, you're... And Andor's like, no, you're going to be okay. I'm like...
No, even when he's like, you know what? You're right. I'm not tired.
Right.
Like, that's such a naivete that it's like, Andor, I felt like we whooped him again, Josie. For fans of the outlaw Josie Wales, I don't know. But we whooped him. Yeah, we whooped him again, boy.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a scene. One of my favorite movies of all time is George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and one of the main 4 characters, gets bitten by a zombie. Then they clear out, even though he's sick and he's going to become a zombie. They clear out the shopping mall, and he goes, "We did it, didn't we? We whooped him, didn't we?" And I always think they took that right out of Josie Wales. But you just brought it up.
Dude, I love the outlaw Josie Wales.
It's great.
Of my favorites.
By the way, it's coming out on 4K on disc. I wasn't finished with that question, by the way.
Okay.
I didn't finish.
Yeah, I started talking about Westerns. I'm sorry, guys.
Well, that's what Star Wars is. Poor Nemec. I think we all knew he was going to die, but I thought he would be shot, not crushed in between a pallet of credits. I mean, that's another thing. War's hell. You think even when you make it out, something like this happens, something slips, and you get killed.
And killed by the very thing they were trying to get.
Right. And the irony of that is ironic.
It's tragic.
Poor Nemec. It was bad.
It's like a black fly in your Chardonnay.
That's exactly what
I'm sure
it
that's
is.
how he would have put it too.
Yeah, totally.
As he was dying.
Daniel Vakura says, to me, this is the best Star Wars content, film, and TV show wise since Return of the Jedi, but I still can't put it above Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars Legacy, and other books and comics. The son was the kid in House of the Dragon who killed the heckler. Good on him.
Oh yeah,
That's right.
And you thought he wasn't gonna like. You figured, oh, this kid's dead, and all of a sudden you hear the other guy get gutted. You hear that,
Yeah.
and then he just spits up blood.
I didn't realize that. That's great. I mean, they must be
about this kid?
Yeah, this.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
He's a I don't know if he was an Aaron. He wasn't a Stark. He might have been an Aaron.
Was he a strong? He's not a strong. No, he's a black. Maybe he's a black. I forget the name.
So many houses in. I'm sorry, guys. I butchered that. There's so many houses in Game of Thrones, and
I mean, it's all central casting.
Yes.
It's same. But yeah, look, I agree. But here's the thing. Like I think the expanded universe. I feel the same way about a lot of Star Trek novels.
Someone said Blackwood.
Blackwood. Yeah, he's a Blackwood, which they're going to come into play later. I think that's true, but it's a different medium. I mean, comic books and books do things that the movies and TV shows can't. But if there was a Star Wars novel, this would have been a great Star Wars novel.
I will say, maybe closer to comics. I was talking to John about this like a few weeks ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago. I said, this feels like a role playing Star Wars game where you get together with your friends and you've got basically like how they do with what's the other Dungeons and Dragons, but you could do like Star Wars role playing games. This had that feel and that structure of like, well, now this happens, and now you talk to this person. So you don't really, your choices have an effect, but you don't know what the effect is.
Right.
And I did feel like, this kind of feels like I'm playing a Star Wars role playing game.
I can see that. I mean, but even when you're playing with your friends, you can take it really seriously and get it's.
Well, we do. We get hyped. I had never really done like that kind of role playing, just like video game role playing, but I hadn't done in person. So I was over at John's place and we're doing that, and I'm getting excited and getting amped. Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And you didn't get crushed.
No.
Daniel Vakura goes on to say, visually, it was stunning with the eye. Makes me more excited for The Acolyte, which is my most anticipated Star Wars show. I hope it can maintain close to the same quality. I can't believe how good Andor is. Well, Daniel, I think you'll get total agreement from us.
We're kind of an echo chamber now.
Yeah. And I want to see more of it. I want to see more of this world. I think it's amazing. And yeah, bring it on. Bring it on. Andrew Weeby says, Nemec is like what a poli-sci student was in Star Wars. What if there was a poli-sci student in Star Wars? You know what? Yeah, he's an idealistic college student, an idealistic grad student studying different governments.
He's the students from Les Mis.
Yes, that's exactly what he is. Good call.
Thanks.
That's exactly what he is. The students from Les Mis. Yes. John Redcorn says, thoughts on the Andor low viewership rumors. Look,
I love rumors.
I mean, here's
She's watching.
look. Here's what I find interesting about these streaming shows. Like these shows are going to continually be watched for a long time.
Right.
Now, there might be low viewership numbers now, but I think word of mouth, people are going to go find this show. People are going to be watching Andor and talking about it all the way through the end of the year.
I mean, I'm wholeheartedly recommending this show to anyone.
Yeah,
and the
me
best
too.
part is because I can't go and recommend House of the Dragons to some families or whatever.
Right.
But I can absolutely recommend this.
Yes. Hot D.
You're gonna feel engaged as an adult or whatever, and your kids are gonna love it too.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially if you have kids that aren't like, I've watched an Andrei Tarkovsky movie before. I mean, this is not the slowest thing in the world.
No, try watching. God, no.
Rings of Power.
I wasn't gonna say that, but no. Anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot more things I've seen in my life that are slower than this. Matt Sanders says, great episode. I think I'm expanding, sitting on the couch watching Andor, Rings of Power, She-Hulk, and House of the Dragon every week. Ha! I'm going to use expanding from now on. Well, yeah, I mean, look at what you just listed. I mean, in 1 week, you're getting House of the Dragon, you're getting Marvel, you're getting Star Wars, you're getting Game of Thrones, and you're getting Lord of the Rings.
Right.
In a week.
Yeah.
Now, it might not all be to your taste. You might not love it all, but it's amazing we live in a world where all 4 of these things are coming out
it's happening.
currently in the same week. We are, my friends, in an embarrassment of riches, a time of wonder if you are a fan of science. I mean,
Do you yeah, go ahead.
when I was a kid, we'd be lucky to get Automan and Manimal. I mean, that would, or The Fantastic Journey or Otherworld. I know you're probably going, what? Look them up. Look at what we got when I was a kid. It's so...
In the 80s and 90s, we got to go to like stale, not even comic shops, but like gaming shops that smelled like they had mildew on every page of every book, and we still loved it. And all we could do was look at these black and white books that explained all the creatures in it, and we were just and we're literally for decades we wished upon high that we could see an actual good Spider-Man movie and more Star Wars and God forbid Lord of the Rings, and now we're getting it and we're just like and like I had to put that in perspective because for decades I wanted to be here.
Right. You know what? I mean, when I was a kid growing up, I loved I never thought, even when something like I'd watch a Megaforce in 1982, 40 years ago, I'd watch Megaforce. It came out in that great summer of 82. And I'm like, well, that was terrible. but you know what? I still kind of loved it.
It was something.
Yeah, it was bad, but I loved it. I remember seeing Space Hunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone with Michael Ironside as the Overdog and Molly Ringwald. And I'm like, it was in 3D. And I'm like, this is not good either, but I still loved it. I didn't go home and go, that sucked. I mean, I liked everything. I didn't love everything. Now people are like, I hate that. And I'm not saying, look, I hate modern Star Trek. I've hated Star Trek since 2009.
Yeah.
But I certainly love Picard season 3.
Yeah.
But I want to love Star Trek.
And look at Andor. We love it.
Oh my God, I
House
love
of the
Andor.
Dragons. We love it.
I mean, Rise of Skywalker made me want to scoop my eyeballs out with a teaspoon. But I was able to see, you watch Andor and you're like, my God. You know, it really bothers me that we didn't get the Star Wars sequel trilogy did not have the level of writing that Andor has.
They had the time to develop it.
I know.
Oh, well.
You know what's funny? While you guys were complaining about the 80s, I didn't
complain about it.
I didn't even exist till the 90s, so I wouldn't know that struggle.
It was a struggle. Believe me, it was a struggle. Bert says Chekhov's belt and expanding waistline had a rather sinister payoff. It certainly did. Also, he might feel the back of my hand was a standout line showing aggression. No, it was great. The writing in the show is so good. He was great too. He was an Imperial officer. Like, he was a lot more nuanced and well-defined than the other Imperial officers we see. I mean, I really like, even in Rogue One when we got Director Krennic, he was great too. And I love this guy.
Dies of a heart attack.
I know. Just look at it.
In a battle, and he dies of a heart attack. They didn't have to write that. He could have just been shot.
Yeah, he could have been shot,
like Ricochet or something.
But they foreshadowed it. You know, maybe it's you who are expanding.
Yeah.
Yes, your wife knew, buddy. Time to get on that keto diet or whatever.
Too late.
All plant-based diet. You're done. Bye-bye. Dr. J says the casting on this show from Nina Gold and Martin Ware is fantastic. Every character feels realistic and looks lived in. I am totally immersed in the storyline and performances. Dr. J, Julius Irving, you are absolutely correct. That is, I feel the same way.
The dam that is real.
Yeah.
And it is aged, so they built around it. I mean, that doesn't get more lived in than that. That thing is weathered.
I mean, even when they get up on top of that and you see, it's great.
Yeah.
And who would have thought that now there's a dam in Europe somewhere that's become a tourist attraction?
Right.
They'll come see the Star Wars tour of this dam. Aldani, here we are. It's the Aldani Dam. They'll rename it.
And we'll see more of that.
And we are going
That's not the last we've seen. Not of that dam.
Right.
I just mean
of
reality,
stuff.
stuff.
One of the great things about Game of Thrones, let's go to Dubrovnik or let's go to Spain or wherever we're going to go. What's next? Santez Henderson says, holy shit, this episode was great with its pacing and tension. You knew the moment that Imperials figured out the comms issue, the crew was in for it. Also, Scrim was a dirtbag. Glad he was taken care of. Yeah, it's true. I mean, and that was the thing. Somebody said Chekhov. What did he say? Chekhov's what?
Belt.
Belt instead of Chekhov's gun.
Right.
I love that. But that's one of the great things. Look, when you have writers that understand how to write, and, we're so used to seeing writers who haven't, or who don't write as well as the people that are writing the show. I mean, remember, our showrunner is an Academy Award winning screenwriter. And that's what we're getting. We're getting Academy Award caliber writing here. And it's just fantastic. Fangblaze71 says, my God, this episode was so amazing. This might be my favorite episode of all the shows on Disney Plus. This made me feel the Star Wars magic again. I agree, man, especially that ending. TIE fighters pursuing him into the eye. We're gonna make the navigation. Flying through hyperspace ain't like Dustin Crops, boy. I mean, that was some tense stuff. Yeah. It was so good.
And even after, so I allowed myself to watch it straight through, but then I would go back and I'd start picking it apart a little more.
Yeah.
And just, incredible.
Incredible. Fangblaze71 goes on to say, the visuals for the asteroid storm were absolutely beautiful. I could stare at that asteroid rain all day. I know. It was incredibly beautiful. And
the sound.
The sound and everything about it was. See, the funny thing about Star Wars is Star Wars has and this is what drives me crazy once again about Star Trek. Star Wars has had a consistent look to its effects since 1977. They've kept the look of space the same, the way spaceships move and look when they're moving. For 45 years, they've had consistently the same, whereas a lot of other franchises, especially Star Trek, and it drives me crazy, they change it all the time. So there's no, why does space change? If you're making Star Trek, you should pick a consistent look of space.
Right.
Why does space change depending on what show you're watching? I hate that. Star Wars has very much stayed consistent with the star fields, the movements of ships, the way they look, and it's very much appreciated.
And not that we got a whole lot of ships in this series so far, but they look great.
So great.
Yeah. So
great. And you don't have to, see TIE fighters painted black to, look, it's a new TIE fighter who's painted black. I see a red TIE fighter. No. Kurt says, what happened to the hostages? Did Cinta murder them? I don't think so.
No.
I think when it was time to go, they go.
Her leader said that's not what we do.
Yeah, that's not what we do.
They're just tied up.
Somebody will find them.
I mean, all those guards are still outside watching the fireworks.
Right.
That's the best part because then she blended in with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was another thing. Half of them didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
So it was great.
Can I ask, did it show what happened to Cinta? Did it show her escape or anything?
She walks off. She's in her uniform, and she walks off with the other guards that are outside with the tribe watching the sky.
Okay,
she blends in, and then she probably just disappears.
I could not remember, so I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah. Fangblaze says the score for this episode was amazing, too. The music's incredible.
You know what? I got to go back just to hear the score. Because I remember moments of the music got tense and my shoulders got tense, but I have to actually go back now and actually listen to the score.
Yeah, and what I love about this, again, even the score is different than your traditional Star Wars score, and it works so well with the show.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear Reigns of Castamere or something in there.
It would fit.
Yeah,
it would not work. What's next? James Wheeler send in a $20 super chat. Thank you, James. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Marie Seifring sent in a $19.99 super chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. It was interesting to see how quickly Andor shot the guy who wanted to steal the credits. So did that guy insist on the trip to the doctor to help his friend, or was he only interested in having a chance to steal the credits?
I think there's a duality there. I think he was like, we can't just let him die. And then as they were going, they're like, they'll be busy. I could probably get out of here with this money.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a duality. I think you're both. I think you're right on both. I call him Quick Draw McGraw.
Oh,
that thing was just like, boom. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, even the thought process, because he was like, you'd know if you're sitting with that guy who's also had a rough background, that if you now say no, I'm not going to do that, that's wrong. Well, he's probably going to kill you.
Yeah.
And take all of it.
Yeah.
That was a streetwiseness, whatever. But he knew at that moment, I'm either going to have to go through with this guy because he's forcing my hand, or I'm going to have to quick draw McGraw him and
he did.
blast him. Yeah.
I mean, that was the only way around it.
Yeah.
It would have, because it would have probably turned into a battle. Somebody would have died. That's the thing. What I love about Cassian Andor, he has no problem pulling that gun, quick draw McGraw, and busting a cap in someone's ass or their head. Go for the John Wick shot. Late Night Alum says, finally, an alien of sorts, Dr. Quad Paws. Well, I mean, yeah, there you go. There was an alien, Dr. Quad Paws. Hello, action figure. But I think that was great. I mean, that guy, because he's at Dr. Quad Paws, I mean, no wonder he came out to be a doctor.
I love that he patted him.
Yeah, it was
Like there was like some empathy there.
Yep, there was.
Yeah.
There was empathy. What a great character. It's great stuff. Batgare. Every episode has a big impact on the characters. Totally, absolutely, 100%. I mean, there's not a wasted bit of screen time in this show at all. Every single moment leads somewhere.
It's almost as if they read in a blink of an eye.
Right, the Walter Murch editing book,
Walter Murch editing
which is one of
book.
my favorite books ever.
In the blink of an eye.
In the blink of an eye.
There's no fat, you
Right.
know.
So good. That, by the way, if you're interested in film editing, read Walter Murch's book In the Blink of an Eye. Yeah. It'll teach you a lot about cinema and technique. It's really worth reading, even if you're not an editor. So pick that up and read Sergei Eisenstein book on the five levels of montage.
Yeah, I had to read that. I had to read In the Blink of an Eye when I went to my post-production schooling.
Yeah.
I didn't just, that's the beautiful thing. You can learn all the technicals on YouTube now. That's what's the door, the invisible hand is gone. I was the last of a generation that felt I needed to go to a formal schooling for this.
Right.
But I am glad I did because I was forced to read that stuff. And then as I'm reading it, I'm not forced. I'm enjoying it. But yeah.
Yeah. In the Blink of an Eye is it's a great book.
Save the Cat for whatever.
Save the Cat that Blake Snyder wrote about screenwriting. Mr. 47 sends in a super chat.
And then I'm just scrolling through really quick to see that we didn't skip anything.
Oh, is that our last one?
Yeah,
there?
that was the last one that loaded.
Okay.
But in the meantime, if you guys want to just talk about how this picture makes you feel while I just do a double check really quick.
She's red-skinned. I don't think she has red hair.
No, would you go there?
No.
One of the things that I've always talked about is
I'd be her friend. I mean, I'm sure she's a lovely person.
I'm sure she is too.
But no.
On my own YouTube channel, we've talked about the fact that, okay, in like Star Trek, there are interspecies romances. Sarek of Vulcan married Amanda Grayson of Earth. So I've always said to the question, like, let's say an alien xenomorph was sentient. You could talk to her and you could woo her. Could you have a relationship with an alien xenomorph? And people are always like, well, no, because they look like giant, slobbery insects. But you could go with somebody who looks more attractive to you. Mm-hmm. So where do you draw the line? Size noodles? How do you feel about that?
Well, it's just when they start to edge toward more, I guess, toward like the animal world. Right. Where's the influence? Is it human or animal?
Right. Okay.
And there's like a scale of like, this is like, looks like more like a four-legged, like,
right.
I get it, we're mammals, but you know what I'm getting at.
I do.
There's a difference between a human and a woolly mammoth.
I completely
and so where's
agree.
that scale? I lean more toward human than woolly mammoth.
So listen, kids, if you lived in the Star Wars universe, tell us if you would date Cy Snoodles. I'd be very curious. Right down there in the comments below. That should spice up the comments. Yeah. Would you date Cy Snoodles if you could? Or not? Would you go with those girls?
Twi'lek?
Oh, I would.
See, that's
Twi'lek. I would absolutely date a Twi'lek.
That's human.
What about those two girls, those two ladies in Mos Eisley in the original Star Wars with the long hair, who are smoking the cigarettes, looking over at Luke?
Well,
like, oh.
Here's the thing: they had that '70s like dive bar look.
Yeah, that's
that
true.
like you could feel like their teeth were yellowed from cigarettes. That like that bar in the original Rocky. It's the crappiest bar. Like I think like, man, when I was going to bars, like they went out of their way to make a bar seem inviting and cool.
Yeah.
And like in the 70s, it's like, I'm depressed. It's the 70s and it's filthy everywhere.
Yeah, and there's smoke everywhere.
And everyone's rude. Give me a beer, and it's a Schlitz. So do we find any more, or do I have to keep bullcrapping?
I was able to look through everything. Looks like I got everything. But before we peace out, I would just like to say there is one Star Wars character that I would date, and it's Kit Fisto.
Oh, well, Kit Fisto's a very handsome man. I can understand that, but I understand I'm not going to go with that joke you want me to make because I'm not going to go there. Not going to go there. Nope. Nope. I know what you're trying to do. I'm not gonna take that bait. But that'll do it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, however you identify across the 28 known galaxies. If you're a Superman the movie fan, I want to thank Jonathan Voico. How much fun was this?
I had a lot of fun. I'm glad we could do this on a show we're both passionate about.
I do too. I mean, I feel so often that we're always listening to people's vitriol or spewing our own on the internet. It's so great to be positive.
Yeah.
I love this show, and we got 6 more episodes.
That's the best.
This is just the halfway point. I expect
only
great things.
Just begun. I don't know.
Well, listen, I want to thank Taylor Gonzalez for doing a great job producing this show. I want to thank John Campea for letting us do this show. I want to thank you all out there and what do you call it? I guess YouTube land for supporting this channel the way you do and giving us great things to talk about. So thank you all very much, especially to our regular viewers who come back and are always supporting the channel. Thank you so much. Jonathan, where can people find you online?
You guys can find me on Twitter at Sonic if you want it over here. That's where you can find me.
And you can find me on Instagram at RM Burnett. Find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Post Geek Singularity. Thanks a lot. May the force be with you.